I have the balls to say things that nobody else has the balls to say.
Hello to the independent thinkers of the world. Thanks for coming back to this channel. If this is your first time, please subscribe, like, and comment on the channel. If this is not your first time, welcome back. So we are going to be focusing on equal pay in soccer in particular, well, where I come from, football, and because we have the person Megan Rapinoe, who was in the White House recently. She was invited to give a speech about equal pay and why she deserves that they should have an equal pay compared to the men's football team. So we are going to be talking about that. We have to look from both sides. Come on, if we're going to be fair, we have to look things from both sides because coin always has two sides.
I'm also a professional athlete, and I've helped, along with all of my teammates virtually here today, one teammate literally here today, win 4 World Cup championships and 4 Olympic gold medals for the United States. And despite those wins, I've been devalued, I've been disrespected, and dismissed because I am a woman. And I've been told that I don't deserve any more than less because I am a woman. You see, despite all the wins, I'm still paid less than men who do the same job that I do. For each trophy, of which there are many, and for each win, for each tie, and for each time that we play, it's less. And I know there are millions of people who are marginalized by gender in the world and experience the same thing in their jobs. And I know that there are people who experience even more, where the layers of discrimination continue to stack against them.
But I just want you to really think for a second before we dive into all the specifics and the numbers. I'm going to show you numbers, okay? You're not going to believe it, numbers and statistics. The idea that a World Cup winning female soccer player who is treated like a god, no doubt has endless endorsements and plenty of money. I assure you, she's got plenty of money and is treated only like a queen wherever she goes. The idea that she has now decided to make the simple fact that male soccer players make more money than female soccer players, to make that a real issue is so dangerous. And the reason it's dangerous is that men and women are different. This is just the truth. There are an awful lot of men who can dunk. There aren't a lot of women who can dunk. That's a basketball reference. I don't know what the soccer equivalent, or I guess there's a lot of men who can do a bicycle kick and maybe not a lot of women that can do a bicycle kick. I'm not even sure. I'm not even totally sure what a bicycle kick is. Is that when you flip over and it's over your head? I don't know. The point is more people go to see men's soccer. Men are generally stronger and faster and more athletic. Generally speaking, the level of competition is higher. That's why if we only had one league, right? If we only had one league, then there would be basically no women in that league. Maybe 1 or 2 women could make it into that league, but probably not, right? I mean, think about the WNBA. Would the best WNBA player be able to make an NBA team roster? 99.9% chance, no. Whoever the best WNBA player in history was, Cynthia Cooper, I liked her in the mid-90s, Sue Ball, or whoever it might be, like they would have no chance. They would be a very tiny, weak player in the men's league. That just is. But by the way, then women can have their own leagues and play in those things. But if people don't go to those games, like think about remember back in the day, back in my day, people used to attend basketball games. You'd go out and you'd buy popcorn and you'd yell with other people and you'd paint your face and all sorts of crazy things. I know it's hard to believe, son, but we used to do that. Well, if a lot of people show up to the male game, or a lot of people watch the male game on TV and the ratings go up, thus advertisers put more money in, well then the teams can pay the players more money. People don't go to WNBA games. They don't really watch them. They don't really watch women's soccer. That's not to say nobody does. It's not even to say one is better than the other, and it's not to say men are better than women. We get all that stuff. You guys get all that stuff. But the dangerous part here is that she's decided, with all of the privileges, her words, not mine, that she enjoys in life, she gets to play soccer for a living. Any one of us would kill to do what you love for a living. I get to do it with what I love for a living. It was a lot of work to get here, but everything being equal, I would rather be in the NBA. Yes, I'm 44. I have a blown out knee, ACL in my knee. I don't even have an ACL in my left knee. I got a bad right ankle. I got a bum shoulder, and I'm only 5'11" and a half. I'd like to say I'm 6 feet. But the point is, you're so lucky. You get to do what you want, and you've decided to make the gender pay gap an issue. And by the way, the gender pay gap isn't even an issue. So she says something about it being a 20.
So nothing she just said is true. She's not paid less for doing the same job. She does a different job. She doesn't play men's soccer. If she played men's soccer, she would have never made it onto a high school team because men are better athletes than women because they're bigger and stronger and faster. And that's just a fact of nature. And you can't change that nature. She's never been devalued. She's extraordinarily overvalued. The President of the United States is standing there listening to this woman babble on and complain. She's rich. She's famous, specifically for her identity politics. And yet she brags and boasts, and I've got all these trophies. Ugly, ugly pride, and then whines and complains, even more ugly pride, and a sort of a false sense of victimhood. How on earth anybody would associate themselves with political views that this sort of woman is preaching? But she knows that victimhood has currency, and I think that is the sort of cynical reason that a lot of people go along with it, is they know that if they can claim any sort of grievance, any sort of victimhood, no matter how ridiculous, like this woman's, then they can get a certain advantage in this society. Very, very ugly stuff.
I think you should look at this as necessarily an attempt to fairness. Sure, there are some people who are putting it in those terms, but I think you have to see this as a negotiation. I think you have to see it as a negotiation, meaning that women can probably get a better deal by claiming that there's some unfairness. It's a real good negotiating strategy. So if you are the women who are trying to get higher salaries, you should act as though it doesn't matter how much your sport is making, because that works against your argument. So I'm also loving the fact that women are negotiating so effectively. That's good news. Women are taking, every lever they can pull, every button they can push. If women are negotiating aggressively for greater pay, and let's say they're using a little hyperbole to get there. Let's say they're using an approach that, who am I thinking of? Who would be a person we all know who sometimes will stretch the facts and maybe paint a picture that's a little hyperbolic, and maybe it's not the most logically accurate way to look at the world, but it works really well for negotiating. Who is that reminding me of? Oh yeah. It reminds me of the person that the women's soccer team hates the most, President Trump. They're using a President Trump technique to negotiate for better salaries, to which I say, good job. Good job. Good job winning the World Cup. Good job being great role models, at least in terms of being powerful women who are doing things that change the world in their own little corner of the world. And good job negotiating. When you're negotiating, the last thing you want to do is be rational. If I could teach you only one thing today, is this. If you are negotiating, don't act entirely rational. The most rational negotiator is the one that loses. You want to be seen as somebody who can't be reasoned with. Because if you can't be reasoned with, and you just got to get past this situation, somebody's going to cave in because, hey, you can't reason with them. They can't see the logic of our argument. So the women's soccer team is doing a total trump on their industry by acting irrational, but very rationally irrational, meaning it's exactly the way they should be handling this. If this were me, if I were on the women's soccer team, I would not be saying, hey, let's look at the percentage that men make for soccer, and if we get the same percentage of that total basket, even though our basket is smaller, wouldn't that be fair? I might be thinking that, but I'm not going to say it out loud if I'm negotiating. If I'm negotiating, I'm just going to say, hey, why are women getting 80 cents on the dollar? What's wrong? This is all unfair.
Uh-oh, what's that? Uh-oh, we've got some breaking news. Some breaking news in this segment. Cutting edge news. Take away, Joe. Yes, this is just breaking news right now. Just in, President Biden dog Major involved in another biting incident. Injured employee had to receive medical attention. Now, we don't know if this injured employee, Joe, is either female or a male. We don't know if they will come back to the White House, or how is this going to affect that person for the rest of their life? We don't know if this dog is going to get cancelled now. Is this dog going to get charged? Is it going to go to jail? We don't know. These are important questions we need to ask the White House, because what is going on there? It sounds like a war zone in there. And wait a minute, I think we just found the dog, Jimmy. We just found the dog. Hold on. Yes, Joe, I think we have found the dog. Major Biden telling his side of the story after a second biting incident. And that was this week's Cutting Edge News. Back to you, Joe.
You're not going to believe this, guys. Christina Hoff Sommers, who you know is a friend of mine, and she's been on the show. She's known as the Factual Feminist right here on YouTube. She wrote a piece in Time magazine a couple years back. Let me read it for you directly. The 23-cent gender pay gap is simply the difference between the average earnings of all men and women working full-time. It does not account for differences in occupations, positions, education, job tenure, or hours worked per week. When such relevant factors are considered, the wage gap narrows to the point of vanishing. Okay, so there's a little bit there. The point is, men and women choose different things. Women are generally more interested in people. Men are generally more interested in things, which is why you get more women that are nurses and more men that are engineers. Now the social justice warriors, and Sweden has a huge problem with this, which has a total meritocracy where people can do whatever they want. They now, because they allowed people to do whatever they want, just as we allow people to do whatever they want here in America. They said, okay, everyone do whatever you want. And then still more women became nurses, more men became engineers. And now basically the social justice warriors are trying to force more women to become engineers and more men to become Gaylord Fokker and become nurses. That's not to say there's anything bad about male nursing, okay? But the point is, we are just different. Also, women can have children. That's not something to be shameful of. That's pretty freaking spectacular, the miracle of birth. Women can do that. People are different. Immutable characteristics related to our gender has some meaning in the world, and we all do different things. Men may want to work longer hours for whatever reason. It might, like there's hunter-gatherer aspects to all of this and all of this stuff. But the point is, and this is what Christina's saying, when you take what jobs people go into, the type of hours they want to put into it. By the way, what sits underneath all of this is somehow that being a mother who stays at home to take care of the kids, as if somehow that is a negative thing. And this is something the left has been pushing on us forever, and it simply is not.
So why don't we try get a female's perspective on this rather than just get the male's perspective all the time? I mean, that doesn't sound fair, does it? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the highest paid UFC fighter at one point, Ronda Rousey, and she will explain this whole equal pay.
We've got quite a large pay dispute happening with our Australian women's soccer team at the moment. Is it frustrating for you as someone who's so prominent in your sport? And we heard you say on the Ellen show the other day you are the richest fighter in UFC, that sort of thing is still going on?
I think that how much you get paid should have something to do with how much money you bring in. I'm the highest paid fighter, not because Dana and Lorenzo wanted to do something nice for the ladies. They do it because I bring in the highest numbers. They do it because I make them the most money. And I think that the money that they make should be proportionate to the money that they bring in.
When the U.S. women's national team finished dusting off the Netherlands in the World Cup final on Sunday, their supporters immediately started shouting, "Equal pay!" The members of the team have convinced themselves and their supporters that they are being exploited by the U.S. Soccer Federation because they don't earn as much money as their far less successful men's team. This is not true. The women are not exploited. They're not paid unfairly. They're paid exactly what their union negotiated for competing in a sport that hasn't fully matured internationally. Women's soccer, in comparison to men's, is a new business, a startup. The first Women's World Cup happened in 1991, 61 years after the first Men's World Cup. The first U.S. women's national soccer team played in 1985, 100 years after the first U.S. men's team. The Men's World Cup in Russia generated $6 billion in revenue. This past Women's World Cup is expected to generate $131 million. FIFA The governing body of the sport showers the men's team with far more money than the women. Men's international soccer is the World Series of poker. The stakes are enormous, and so are the payouts. Right now, women's international soccer is a game of poker among a handful of friends in someone's basement. I get it. Our women are poker sharks, and our men are fish. But our men are swimming in the deepest part of the ocean while the women hunt close to the shore. Degree of difficulty matters. Title IX and this country's liberation of women puts us far ahead of our international competition. There's a reason we beat Thailand by a World Cup record 13-0. There's a reason we've never trailed in this year's World Cup and in all but one game scored a goal within the first 12 minutes. The competition was embarrassingly inferior. We could have routed more teams than just Thailand. We're getting the exact results we paid for. Title IX created hundreds of women's college soccer programs, which are far better funded than the men's. Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan aren't treated unfairly in the all-important development stages. They have a decided advantage over U.S. men. I get it. Our men had a 100-year head start. If the women want additional reparations for that crime, Title IX is the original reparations, then they should shout reparations 2.0 rather than equal pay.
Let me do something that I'm afraid nobody wants to hear or know. Tell you why it's like this. Now, there's two things, first of all. When you talk about, as Trevor Scales just laid out, the bonus difference between the men's team and the women's team, between what a winner, if it had been the U.S. men, would get in the World Cup and the women. The women got a pool, or got paid out from a pool of $30 million from the Women's World Cup. The men would draw from a pool of $400 million, okay? $400 million, $30 million. Why is that? It's because the Men's World Cup generates $6 billion in revenue. The Women's World Cup generates $131 million in revenue. If you want to talk about pay disparity, the Women's World Cup players get paid out 20% of the total revenue. The men get paid out 7%. As a percentage point, they are getting much more. The problem is, for anybody desiring equal pay, and by the way, I think equal pay is a ridiculous concept in and of itself. If the women generate more revenue, they should get paid more than the men. Don't strive for getting the same, strive for getting what you're worth. And if you're worth more, then get more. And so what I'm saying to you right now is soccer, for better or worse, on the men's side, across this globe, is much more popular than women's soccer.
The women's game had higher ratings than the men's, though. So what do you say to that?
Charlie, that's in the United States.
That was in the U.S.
And that's comparing a women's World Cup final that featured the United States against a men's World Cup final in the United States that didn't feature the U.S. team. So you're asking, why didn't, and I can't remember who was in the finals of the men's World Cup at the top of my head, but why didn't that game outrate the women's World Cup final that featured the U.S.? Because we like watching the U.S.
Of course.
Just sort of bananas. And what is she, when they say equity, so what is she really saying? What is she really saying here? We want equity. So what you're saying is, okay, so if the men earn all of the money here, and we're playing here and not that many people come see us, we don't earn that much, we just automatically should be able to take their money. And of course, in her mind, in the world of equity, in the world where nothing has value, and you can just take from whoever you want for whatever reasons you want, and you have a president with dementia sitting there placating to it. I said I wasn't going to do any Biden stuff. What are you going to do? We got a big problem on our hands. But this more so, beyond the statistics, which I think you guys get, the choices, which I think you guys get, this more the idea that she's using her pulpit, where she could be doing such good for girls, if she cares about young girls, like wanting to play soccer and do what they love or whatever that might be. It's like she could be inspiring so many people right now. Does that sound inspiring, what she's going for there? That, no, I don't get paid enough money to play soccer. Okay, and then these idiots sitting in the White House, it's just, and then of course the line about white people. Of course, this is, whose fault really is this people? Well, white people, because white people have been doing this forever just like this. God,
and you ain't black.
Guys,
well, in Iceland, an energy company was about to go bankrupt. A new manager came in and said, okay, we've got to throw everything out and start again, and made a conscious decision based on his belief that it's a human right that men and women are paid equally. And so went out of his way to make the workforce within that company 50-50 as much as he could in terms of men and women being represented. So we're talking about engineers, we're talking about tradespeople, we're talking about in workshops, we're talking at the managerial level.
If you hire 50% women engineers and 50% male engineers, then the women engineers are less qualified because the pool of engineers is lower among women. So you can't hire 50% women engineers without producing a decrement in the quality of the engineers, because this selection pool is too small. You can't do that on a large scale. You might be able to do that in one company.
Yeah, and they certainly argue that it's not tokenism and they're not hiring second-rate women.
They might argue that, but if you did it on a large scale, that's what would happen. Because look, you think about it mathematically. If there's 10 times as many male engineers as there are female engineers, and you insist upon hiring 50-50, then obviously the degree to which the female engineers are proficient cannot be the same as the degree to which the male engineers are proficient. It's mathematically impossible.
So you're saying don't even try?
No. I'm saying something much more specific than that. Now, one company might be able to do that for a short period of time in one isolated location. But there, of course, if you have a new manager come in and he's doing all sorts of new things, there's 50 reasons why the company is going to fail or succeed. And you can say, well, it was because of the gender equity policies. It's like, yeah, well, it's a multivariate problem.
But they do point to the diversity now of the workforce, to improved morale, to improved strategies on how to come up with solutions, to their increased profitability.
None of that research is credible. There's no evidence whatsoever that diversity as measured by racial or gender representation has any bearing whatsoever on creativity, productivity, outcome, any of the things you're measuring. None of that research is credible in the least. It's not at all. Men and women make different amounts of money. Well, sorry, that's not a fine-grained enough analysis. More agreeable people get paid less. Why? They're not as assertive.
So does agreeability mean that you're just not as good at the job?
No.
So shouldn't...
It depends on the job, I would say.
Yeah.
It's actually probably makes you better. It probably makes you better at jobs that involve care of people, because agreeableness seems to be that trait that facilitates interpersonal care. So my suspicions are, the research on this isn't solid, but my suspicions are that agreeable nurses are better than disagreeable nurses. But we don't know, and the effect isn't that large. Agreeableness tends more to tilt you in terms of interest than in terms of competence. That's how it looks so far.
If I'm understanding what you're saying, the picture you paint is a bleak one.
No, I don't think it's particularly bleak. It looks like real salaries are on the rise and general levels of poverty around the world are declining incredibly rapidly. Women are being educated at an unbelievably high rate compared to 30 years ago. Like, there's all sorts of reasons to be optimistic, but equity is not one of them. It's a bad idea, and we're going to pay for toying with it.
Well, everyone, that is my video for this one. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you want to like, subscribe, comment on it, I would deeply appreciate that. I am going to leave you with the pipe bomb segment, like we always do at the end of every video. And representing this time's pipe bomb segment is Andrew Schultz, and he will be talking about the equal pay debate. Until next time.
Women's soccer. Okay, lesbians, now that I have your attention, why Subaru? Anyway, I want to explain why the U.S. women's national team sued U.S. Soccer for sexist wage discrimination. Now, there are two reasons. One, they are the most dominant force in women's soccer history. Two, they're fucking idiots. Now, I'm not here to bash women. Hope Solo has done that enough. I just want to clarify what's going on. So here it is. The U.S. men's team, if you can even call them men, has an incentive-based contract. They only get paid when they play. And by play, I mean get their shit pushed in by the third world. The U.S. women's team was offered a similar incentive-based contract. They turned it down. The women demanded guaranteed money instead. Then they went out and pillaged more foreign women than the Vikings and won another World Cup. So they did the math and realized they would have made more money if they had taken the original incentive-based contract. So they sued to change their contract and received back pay for all the games they've already played. Obviously, the judge thought this was ridiculous and threw the case out immediately. Now, lasses of the grasses, chicks between the sticks, bitches of the pitches, you can't sue someone for giving you the contract you asked for. You also can't call someone sexist for giving you the contract you asked for. Furthermore, if you ask for a sexist contract, U.S. Soccer isn't oppressing you. You're oppressing you.